Good evening. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Arlington Board of Zoning Appeals, also known as the BZA. I'm Judy Freshman, Chair of the Board. The Board's made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. In addition to myself, we have Charles Smith, Inta Malice, Paul Melnick, and Peter Owen. Also present is the professional staff, including Stephen Rizzi, Coordinator for the BZA, Arlova Vaughn, Zoning Administrator, Blake Bowen, Assistant to the Zoning Administrator, Simon Keynes, Administrative Technician, and Michelle Cabero, Administrative Technician. We thank you for being here and extend a warm welcome. To avoid disruptions, we ask that you please turn your cell phones or pagers off or put them in silent mode. On the front table, you'll find copies of the staff report for each case before us this evening. I recommend that, if you've not yet seen the report for your case, that you get a copy and review it before your case is called. The Board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county zoning ordinance adopted by the County Board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests with the County Board. This Board does have the authority to do 3 things. We can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1- and 2-family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. We can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance, and we can decide appeals of decisions of the zoning administrator. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary in the public interest, including limiting the duration of the use permit. In order to approve a use permit, the law requires that the Board find that the proposal meets conditions and that the use permit will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. To do this, the BZA shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of development with the surrounding neighborhood because the structure's overall footprint, size, and placement are similar to the structures on the properties surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historic features, and/or significant trees and foliage. When granting variances, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that it meets the following criteria. The strict application of the terms of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon, and the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith and any hardship was not created by the applicant, that the variance granted will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area, that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not of so general or recurring in nature as to make reasonably practicable the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance, that granting the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning and/or subdivision ordinance. When deciding appeals of the zoning administrator, the Board must use its judgment to determine if the administrator was correct. This evening, cases will be called and a brief staff report and recommendation will be given. Following that, Board members will ask any questions of staff they may have. Next, applicants or their representative will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. If they choose to make a comment, they must come forward to the podium so their comments can be recorded for the record. Next, all speakers for the items will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip which is available on the table in the front of the room. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the Board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The Board may ask questions of any speakers, but does not permit and will not condone any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. We've deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 20 minutes for appellants in appeals, 5 minutes for applicants for use permits and variances. We have deemed 3 minutes for representatives of organizations and 2 minutes for individuals as sufficient. After the board has gathered all the information they need and discussed the case, we'll decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you're welcome to stay for the balance of the session or leave at your convenience. Again, thank you for being here this evening. Please call the first case.
Case number V-10888-14-UP-5 is a use permit request by Elaine Kaputska, owner, to permit a setback of 10 feet to the eve of a new third-floor addition from the 21st Road North right-of-way instead of 25 feet as required, and to permit a building in excess of 2.5 stories within 25 feet of a street right-of-way, regarding a new third-story addition above the existing second-story walls in the R5 zoning district, premise known as 4133 21st Road North, and staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer the use permit to September 2018 BZA hearing per the applicant's request. I'd also like you to note that there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed, and it's a letter of opposition from a neighbor.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Malice.
Use permit request seems to be 3 years old. Is that correct?
I believe it actually came in 2015, towards the end of the year, but it's more than 2 years old at this point.
It has the 14.
Yes, I believe that was a carryover from an earlier application. But
is there any guidance on how long we keep use permits open, these applications open?
I don't believe that we have precedent stating how long we typically allow cases to stay open. And
from a staff standpoint?
Yeah.
And from our standpoint, we can choose to take your recommendation or make another judgment.
You have the full abilities to approve, defer, and deny.
Thank you.
I would just like to say for the record that situations like this, which drag on and on and on, are very costly in staff time, in advertising, in paper, and not to mention the little bit of time it may take on our agenda. And when we grant a request through an application, it's good for 1 year. And if it's not built or otherwise acted upon, you have to start over. And that means a new application and a new fee. I don't think the fees are sufficiently burdensome to carry the costs of endless deferrals. Something that stretches on for 2 or 3 years, to me, is an unreasonable use of the system.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Smith.
I'd wonder, staff, I presume the applicant is not here tonight, or they didn't send a representative? So they're under the assumption that it's going to go through pro forma as has been the case in the past.
I will say that I conveyed to the applicant that it would be a good idea to have someone here in case you had questions for them.
I'm uncomfortable taking up an application on the merits without an applicant being here, and I associate myself with the chair's remarks with respect to the length of time that the thing could be carried. I would implore staff, when they see this kind of thing, to urge an applicant to withdraw the application, because what she says is that she's overwhelmed by other projects, and that this is at the end, the very back burner of a 12-burner stove or 6-burner stove, and she's admitting that. She's saying she's not going to get to it till the end of the year. So I would encourage staff to ask the applicant to request a withdrawal, such that, because as the chair says, just attempting to forego the modest it's not like a new home where where there's a percentage of the cost. This is a much smaller fee, a few $100s. That if they've thought so much of themselves at the time of the application that they want to do the project now, 2.5 years later, it's unreasonable to continue. And I would implore us to look to the future to always not extend, and for staff to, when they see something going a long way out, to urge an applicant, if you're not ready, to withdraw.
Ms. Malice.
Madam Chair, I appreciate Mr. Smith's comment about the applicant's absence. Therefore, I would be inclined to make this a 1-month deferral and notify the applicant that.
I should state for the record, we've already actually had the agenda for the March meeting go out to the papers. It was published today for the first time.
Okay.
We're also trying to advertise further out to get more notice out to the community on applications.
Is that always going to be the case?
We're going to have a 2-month deferral will be the minimum.
In most cases, I think next month there's a bit of flexibility because the following meeting is a week later, but yes, going forward, agenda should be published by the time we have this meeting.
Well, in that case, I'd be happy to make a two-month deferral for the same purpose.
I'd second that motion.
That was a motion.
Okay.
Motion to defer,
please,
to the April. Would that be April meeting?
Yes. Would you read the case number?
Oh, in case number V10888-14-UP-5.
There's a clue. Seconded by Mr. Smith. And could I just request again that you make it crystal clear that
and they'll have an opportunity to hear this.
At least this chair is not disposed to ongoing mistreatment of the system. Thank you. All those in favor of deferral to April?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next case.
Case number V-11268-17-VA1 is a variance request by Mount Zion Baptist Church, the owners, to permit a development of a lot that does not meet the width and area requirements regarding a new 3-story dwelling in the R27 zoning district, premise known as 1913 South Langley Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the proposed motion to withdraw the subject variance permit request per the applicant's request.
Any comments before we have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Smith.
In the case of V-11268-17-VA1, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals accept the withdrawal of this case.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Owen. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next case.
Case number V-11268-17-UP-1 is a use permit request by Mount Zion Baptist Church owners to permit a setback of 18.9 feet from the wall of the front property line instead of 25 feet as required, 12.4 feet from the porch to the front property line instead of 21 feet as required, and to permit the placement of a 3-story building within 25 feet of a street right-of-way regarding a new 3-story building in the R27 zoning district, premise known as 1913 South Langley Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the motion to withdraw the subject use permit request per the applicant's request.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Smith.
In the case of V-11268-17-UP1, I move that we accept the motion to withdraw the subject case.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Owen for withdrawal. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next case, please.
Case number V-11339-17-UP-3 is a use permit request by Gerald Woodruff, owner, to permit a 4-foot high fence instead of 3 feet within the 25-foot triangle required for visual clearance on the front left corner of the property, and to permit a 6-foot high fence instead of 4 feet as required within 3 feet of the South Ives Street right-of-way regarding an existing fence with permit issued in error and rescinded by zoning staff on a corner lot in the R5 zoning district, premise known as 839 20th Street South. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Owen?
do we have speakers on this item?
Really not.
Okay, I do have some questions for staff. The staff report indicates that the BZA denied a use permit for a fence on the same property in April 2012. Do you have a copy of the application and the BZA action on that item?
I do have a copy of the application, enough for all of the members of the board here. One interesting thing to note when I was gathering this information, here is the sheet of the applicable minutes as well from April of 2012. Again, enough copies for the entire board. But what I noticed is in the minutes, the item appears to have been deferred in April to a May meeting, and then I searched for the May minutes to see what action was taken at that time, and it appears to have not been heard again. So at this point, it was not approved, but I think that saying it was denied may also be incorrect. It may have been withdrawn between meetings. That would actually probably be a good question for the applicant as he went through it then.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, I had other questions about whether staff's analysis, what did staff recommend? You recommended denying the previous fence permit. So what's the difference between this application and the previous one in terms of what's being requested?
The request is very similar to what was requested last time. I'd say the difference in analysis is that I did the analysis, and the conclusion last time was that there were not comparable scenarios in the surrounding area, as it is a use permit request. And I came to a different conclusion. I said it's on a corner lot, and there are 4 houses, or 3 other houses on the corner that all have fences that I think don't meet the technical requirements for the vision clearance triangle, certainly. So I think that it is rather comparable to the situation in the surrounding area.
Last time we had one of these cases with the 25-foot triangle, there was a lot of dispute as to exactly where the lines were drawn. And eventually there arose a helpful diagram from staff that showed exactly what was where. Did you by any chance prepare a similar diagram for us?
Yes, I did. You'll find them towards the end of the PowerPoint presentation, but based off of the last similar case, I made similar graphics that show the existing fence, what does meet the zoning ordinance requirements, what portions do not. I have it for both streets, and then I also have a plat that shows where different heights are allowed on this property.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
Excellent, thank you.
What are the distances of the fence from the street right-of-way lines? And the staff report discusses the distance from the roadbed, but the ordinance specifies the right-of-way. Are those 2 lines the same in this parcel?
So no, the 2 lines are definitely not the same in this parcel. I'll say it was a bit hard to do the analysis on this because the documents that were submitted and approved were not on a plat. So the fence isn't shown in relation to the property boundaries in this case. But we believe the fence to have been built over a pre-existing fence, which is shown on this plat, and it's essentially pretty much on the property line, at least on the plat that we had from 2006. So when doing the measurements in the field, obviously not a certified surveyor, so I was taking measurements from the right-of-way because I could get comparable measurements for all the surrounding properties, which is why I used those measurements and submitted them as part of the staff report.
Thank you. As noted in the staff report, this fence sits on top of parts of this fence sit on top of and or directly behind a low retaining wall. In this configuration, what is the proper method for measuring the height of the fence?
In this configuration, because there's separation from the retaining wall and the fence, they are measured independently. So we do measure this as a 4-foot high fence and not 4 feet plus the retaining wall. If it were to be built on top of the retaining wall and or attached to it in any way, then we would measure it as one entity.
Okay, so it would be something like 6 feet tall if it were on top of the retaining wall, but because it's a couple of inches behind the retaining wall, it's height from the heightened ground level behind the retaining wall.
Correct, from existing grade.
Okay. And I think that's it for my questions for now. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Applicant, oh, sorry.
Do you know when the fence was built?
The applicant can give you a more definite date, but it was this summer.
You have another question. Sorry.
Mr. Owen.
There's actually two parts to this request. One is for building in the 25-foot triangle area, and the other is for the 6-foot tall fence portion of the fence that's not near the intersection. And I guess because that's less than 3 feet from the right-of-way, that's over height as well. But the staff report didn't really seem to discuss the 6-foot tall portion. The applicant submitted some information about comparable fences in the neighborhood, but what is staff's analysis for the existence of 6-foot tall fences so close to the right-of-way that are not near intersections in the neighborhood?
I would say there's certainly a case for keeping fences to a lower level in close proximity to the right-of-way, especially when we think that the street width may be increased so that the right-of-way goes all the way up to said existing fence. In this case, there's an existing sidewalk that we don't think will be removed for any reason, and so it acts as the buffer in this case that would provide that distance that would otherwise not be allowed.
I guess what I'm asking is that a key criterion for us in use permit approvals is similarity to other structures in the neighborhood. And so I'm wondering, did staff engage in an analysis of the similarity between the 6-foot height of this fence in this location compared to other 6-foot tall or fences in the neighborhood, or fences that are really close to the property line that may be taller than 4 feet?
I would say staff did not focus on 6-foot tall fences within proximity to the right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
Applicant, please.
Yeah, I'm Tony Saba. I'm Gerald Woodward's husband. I'll be talking for him. Any questions you might have for me, or?
Can you answer the question of the previous BZA hearing and what, if it just was?
Yes, the way that happened.
What happened?
Is Drew was working with us at that time, and he left already. He told us that if you were to build a lattice, not make it a 6 solid foot fence, but lattice instead of it being 6 solid, have a couple of feet of lattice on top, that it could be built on the property line per Arlington regulations. So that was the information we were given. Now, the very first time we did this, it just got so complicated that we got a little bit frustrated, because the way that the sidewalk is built, it's got like a little, you can see from the picture, I don't know what to call it, it's got like a little lip on it. So if we go in through that, to us, it seemed like it was plenty of room for the right-of-way to go through. Plus, one of the main reasons we were asking for this use permit back then was because we have 4 very mature trees that we planted ourselves that we did not want to lose. If we would have gone 3 feet in, all those 4 beautiful trees that the neighbors always say it's beautiful in the fall because they're red maples and they're beautiful, they would have been lost if we would have gone the 3 feet into the property line, and it would have been aesthetically, it wouldn't have looked good because it's not a flat sidewalk. It's got that little lip on it. So if you go 3 feet on top of that, it just would have looked awkward. So it got a little bit frustrating. And then we actually did our numbers, And we said, I don't know why we're going forward with this. We really can't afford it because it's very expensive. Medallion is a very reputable fence company, and they're not inexpensive. And back then, we were supposed to come up with 50% of the money, and then on down payment 50%. But the second time around, they have 2-year no interest. So we decided to go ahead and do it, and we told them this time, you guys take care of getting all the requirements that are needed for the fence. And then we mentioned to them that we really would like to keep it on the property line because of the trees. And Drew, I don't know if he still works there, I mentioned to Medallion, he said that if we have a lattice on top, that it would be fine and it would be approved. And so they took all those drawings, they took it to the county, and it was approved, and we said, ooh, good, it approved. So I guess Drew was right. The lattice is what made the difference. And so everything was fine, it was approved. And then they actually built it really fast, maybe, I don't know the exact dates because that was one of your questions, but it was probably a week after it was approved, but really fast after it was approved to build it. That's when it was built. And then 2 weeks later, someone shows up, takes measurements of the fence, and tell us it was approved in error. And somebody actually called me on the phone, really with a really loud voice. I had to tell the lady, please calm down, I don't understand what you're saying. And she probably thought that we hadn't built the fence yet, and she was trying to convey that we shouldn't. And then finally, when I understood what she was saying, I said, I'm sorry, but the fence is already built. We've already paid Medallion. We're already committed. And the way that Medallion builds these fences, the reason we pick them is because they build it for it to last a lifetime. They go really deep with really metal things, because they showed us. They go with these metal things so that wind, snow, rain, nothing will, lifetime warranty. And then we met Stephen. He came to the site. We explained to him exactly that we didn't want to lose these trees, and we were just caught in the middle. So basically, everybody loves the fence. Coincidentally enough, when Stephen was there, and we actually assured to him, that we didn't pay anyone, but a neighbor passes by and says, you have a beautiful fence. Can you tell me who did it? And Stephen was there. Okay. And I said, Stephen, we didn't pay the neighbor. We didn't tell him to do that. But that's basically the story of this.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the applicant?
According to the staff report, however, there was a complaint about the fence. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I'm aware of that. There was one person that complained, and we have no idea who that person is. We went all through the neighbors, all our immediate neighbors and beyond, and everybody signed that they like the fence and they think it's beautiful. And so I actually wanted to know. I didn't know it was against the law for me not to know who complained. I actually emailed them and said, it'd be nice to know so that we don't go to their house and awkwardly ask them to sign a petition that they support the fence, not knowing that they're the ones that made the complaint. But apparently we can't know that. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions to the applicant? No speakers, right? Blake? Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen.
So this is the second case in a year where somebody, an Arlington homeowner, has contracted for a beautiful, expensive fence, gotten a permit for it, built it. The county got a complaint from somebody, could be anyone, right? And then we found out that the permit was issued in error. The last time we had this happen, it was a custom-built wrought iron fence with stone footings, and the use permit was not granted. It was partially granted on one side, but it was not granted. I don't know what's happened since then, but that was an extreme hardship for that homeowner. And we are facing another situation where there is a considerable hardship to a homeowner who was acting in a belief that they had gotten a proper permit. So I just think it's worth noting at the outset that this is a deeply unfortunate situation to be in, where somebody went to the county government, said, is this going to be okay? Was told yes, invested all the money, and then is now being told that there's a violation, and it's just I think it's very sad. However, this rule, many of our rules that we have to enforce are aesthetic, where we have to decide whether or not the thing that's being built is in the character of the neighborhood and would affect property values or people's quality of life. It seems to me, maybe there's other members of the BZA who don't like the look of this fence, but to me it seems like a handsome enough fence. And there's considerable evidence from the neighborhood that the neighbors think that it's an attractive fence. So from my perspective, the question is, as it was the last time, this 25-foot rule especially is a safety rule. And here, although the fence is literally 3 feet tall, as we discussed, measured from the ground beneath it, it is in practice closer to, well, I don't know, I didn't measure it, but it's a lot taller than 3 feet because it's sitting right behind a couple foot tall wall. And my experience when driving by it was when I was sitting down in my car, it was a little bit hard to see around the corner. I'm troubled by the notion that the BZA, which our expertise is not usually in making safety judgments, would make a safety judgment, and certainly on the record that we have before us right now. I don't really see. I don't know. Did staff consult with the Transportation Division on the safety implications of this? AASHTO standards?
Nope.
Street widths, parking locations, average car speeds, any of that?
I can tell you the speed of 20th Street South is 25 miles per hour. Yep. I can tell you there's a stop sign on the cross street, but that's...
And the further complication is that traffic safety questions are often very counterintuitive. Often the data that we see from traffic safety, things happen the opposite of what you would expect. A street intersection that looks really confusing can often be safer than one that looks straightforward, because the drivers will pay more attention at a confusing looking intersection and slow down and wake up. So it's not necessarily, the case that these kinds of obstructions will have a particular effect unless you have evidence that shows it. So, I'm troubled by the notion that we would say yes to this fence, which was, I guess, similar to, possibly even identical to one that was previously presented to the BZA, which was the staff recommended denial and the BZA did not approve it. So that's sort of my opening thoughts.
Any other questions, comments?
I think Mr. Owen's point about, our ability to evaluate safety concerns is probably beyond our immediate purview. Would it be possible for transportation staff to actually tell us if, in their opinion, this is a safe intersection?
I don't know whether they would chime in or not. We can certainly ask.
I mean, that's certainly something that would, be informative at this point.
I'd just like to say that I don't have any objection to the fence per se. I have a lot of objection to building permits issued in error for which applicants pay the price and that put us in the position of being the bad guy.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Melnick.
So I'm in agreement with Mr. Owen's comments, because I see that staff is mainly concentrating on the compatibility, but just because, on the other four corners are, even if there were similar fences, just because those are there doesn't make this right under the law. And, and I too am focusing on the conditions of whether it adversely affects the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, or whether it's detrimental to the public welfare. And what was being said about a study from the county, it is the burden of the applicant, to show that these exceptions are applicable, and to make that case. So, and I just don't think the case has been made. And I too am concerned about the fence being raised up all that much more on the wall, on the soil behind the wall, because it's definitely elevated. So I'm concerned too, and just also, we do have a precedent, as Mr. Owen was saying, of almost an identical case involving, being able to view through the fence, see oncoming traffic, that kind of thing. So I'm aligning myself with Mr. Owen's views.
Okay.
Other comments, questions?
Question for my colleagues, I guess, Mr. Owen. And would additional information on safety be persuasive at this point?
I think that the county's delegation to us of authority to issue use permits contains this health or safety element. And so, I think one reading of that element that Mr. Melnick just spoke to is, to say, hey, BZA, if there's a safety question, butt out. Don't get involved in safety issues. If there's any safety issue, then this is not part of your power to do. I think the county board itself is better capable in the long run of evaluating those safety concerns. The police, the transportation division, those people, report to the county board through the manager, and they have all of that expertise available to them. So I think if there were evidence that could show that there is literally zero safety risk, then sure, I think that we could find there's no safety risk based on some bundle of evidence that said that, and then maybe it would be approvable. But I'm skeptical that with this particular situation, that would be what we would ultimately get. I think we might well get something much more equivocal from any analysis that would, or except shy of an extremely expensive analysis, right? Hundreds of hours of time and whatever. So I guess I can't rule it out. Like if the head of the transportation division and the police chief both came and swore there's zero risk here, then I would say, well, why is this regulation even on the books? It's clearly a bum regulation to be so inflexible. So I think that's my view. In theory, I think you're right. There is some amount of evidence that might be reasonable to consider and go the other way. But I'm with the previous applicant with the other fence. We deferred them like 2, maybe 3 times for further discussion and research, and it didn't really change. And I think it wound up being even more traumatic for the applicant to sort of keep hope alive, all that time when it really wasn't going to go anywhere. So I don't want to say no. I can't possibly imagine that it would ever be shown to be safe, but I just feel like the effort that it would take and the likelihood that that effort would succeed might not be worth it.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Smith.
I have a question of staff. Did you say that, well, let me ask, where are the stop signs on this intersection? Is Eves, is that street stopped at 20th, or is 20th stopped at Ives?
So it's on Ives, and it's... You can't see this behind you, but
Yeah.
here and here.
Southeast
So
and
it would be on
northwest.
the opposite corner. It would be across Ives is where the sign would be, and on across the street for the other one. Yeah, those corners.
Correct.
So 20th is a through street.
Correct.
So Ives, you're coming up Ives, you have to stop at 20th in either direction.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Melnick.
So, and I too am very sympathetic about what's happened and the expense and all that sort of thing. And the trouble is, it's hard to say, what could be done with the existing structure of the fence to make it more see-through and safer. Because I was looking, and there's very close pickets on it. I think that's what you call them. But whether taking every other one out, or just something like that. It's because just in your position, I was trying to figure out for myself what if anything could be done.
Cut it to 3 feet just in that corner.
What was that?
Maybe cut it to 3 feet just in that corner.
Yeah, if that could be done, with the satisfactory design.
But
Steve, there.
yeah,
Yeah,
It would be compliant by right if it were lowered to that height, right?
yeah, that could be done.
Yeah, if the corner were located to cut down the red, then it would be allowed by right. Is that right?
yeah. Aesthetically, it would not look very good. It would have been better if the county would have approved 3 feet all throughout. And then that's going to be at our expense. Plus, when you mentioned about the right-of-way, I don't know, did you read the president of our association? Did you read her letter?
I did.
Okay. Her letter says, quote, I have walked and driven through the intersection numerous times with an eye to seeing if there are any safety issues caused by the fence. The fence does not obstruct the view of cross traffic, and the stop sign on South Ives provides an even greater margin of safety. By the time you arrive at the stop sign on southbound Ives, you have full view of the cross traffic in either direction. So that's her interpretation, and she went there a lot before she wrote this letter. The way that the stop signs, you can't tell from the picture, but the way that the stop signs are set up, first of all, it's the law that you have to stop at a stop sign before you pass the stop sign. The way the stop sign is, it's way back. So when you stop at the stop sign, fence or no fence, you can't see any traffic because the stop sign is so far back. So people that stop, people in the neighborhood, because we know it, we stop at the stop sign because it's the law, and then we slowly go up, and then we stop again at the intersection. And that's the case in most of our neighborhood. All the stop signs are way before you can actually see traffic going through. So if there's that study made, then the study has to include why are the stop signs so far behind where you can't even see traffic if you stop behind the stop sign? Because you can't. And it really doesn't obstruct the view at all. It doesn't. It doesn't, because across the street, right across the street from us, the duplex also has a 4-foot picket fence, and it doesn't because the stop sign on that is also way behind, way back, and you have to go and you have to actually get to the street to see the traffic. And when you do that, you have full view. You have no way of not seeing traffic.
Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen.
I don't want to get into too much of a debate here, but I'll just observe that, I think part of what might be the reason for the county board's regulation for the 25-foot triangle is to address things like kids on scooters and roller skates and bicycles that might be on the sidewalk directly in front of this fence. You can see in the view that we have right here, if a child is coming down, is it Ives Street? Is that the north-south street? If you were on 20th Street, you might have trouble seeing a child barreling towards the intersection on a tricycle or a bicycle. But what 6 years on the County Board's Transportation Commission taught me is that I'm no traffic engineer, and traffic engineers say surprising things all the time. So what I'm mostly convinced of is that I don't know for sure what's safe here. And I would want a traffic engineer's opinion before I would feel confident in saying so.
So when you're saying scooters, are you saying
on
the street?
I really was not asking a question.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I do wonder about if we should discuss a little bit the 6-foot portion. Can we move to a picture that shows the 6-foot portion? So from an aesthetic perspective, I think that the applicant actually did do a great job providing other photos showing comparable fences in the neighborhood. And even though staff has not analyzed this, I feel like the criterion for compatibility with the neighborhood, in the applicant's materials, there's some unnumbered pages. There's a photo of some trees that are blocking a sidewalk, and then the next page, there's some more bushes blocking either the same or a different sidewalk, and then there's a third page with 2 photos of a wooden fence with some posts coming up and a garbage can in front. And it doesn't say what the location of that property is. Maybe I'll ask the applicant, do you know the property address for where that photo was taken?
The one with the sticks coming out?
Yes.
That's actually on the corner of, it's actually on our, well, not on our block, but it's in the corner of Ives and 19th.
So that's pretty nearby.
Yeah, it's a block away.
So for me, and then there's the next page. There's one with another picket fence with sort of sloping lines to the main pickets. Where is that?
That one is 3 blocks away on Ives, between 17th and 16th.
Okay.
And we're on 20th.
So from an aesthetic perspective, I feel like we're in the ballpark here, and the sympathy goes to the applicant for having a valid fence permit. I do frankly think that there's also a safety issue there too, because this 6-foot tall portion of the fence abuts the applicant's driveway. And so if somebody's backing out of that driveway and there's a bicycle or a child walking or something there, it might be hard to see. But I think to me that's less clear cut. I think that the 25-foot triangle rule is obviously a safety rule, and I think that the 6-foot tall thing is not exclusively a safety rule. So I'm a little bit more sympathetic on the 6-foot tall portion.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
Madam Chair, I guess as I've considered this, I have some hesitation in making personal judgments about safety issues. As Mr. Owens said, we make judgments about aesthetics and distances, but when it comes to safety, I would rather have an expert make that decision. And right now, in our zoning ordinance, an expert has said that this is what's necessary.
Do you consider issuance of a building permit to evaluate safety?
I'm sorry?
Do you think that when they review for a building permit, they're considering safety, or is it simply whatever the numbers are?
If the permit makes an error, then no.
That's my point.
That they should have, and they didn't.
And once again, we have an applicant who's hoisted on that petard.
I agree.
Okay, can we resolve this, please?
I don't have a sense of my colleagues' views as to the 6-foot tall portion, so I'm hesitant to make a motion yet.
if it was up to me, I would, if a deferral was acceptable, I would prefer to do a deferral to get definitive traffic information if my colleagues thought that that would make a difference. If they feel that the ordinance has already incorporated that, then I won't make that motion.
Speaking for myself, I would take a deferral over a denial because I can't support that. I would actually support the staff recommendation.
So let me ask staff, what is your thinking in terms of getting more definitive information on the safety issue here?
We can put in a request to transportation to chime in on it. They typically don't chime in on variance applications. I can't say whether they would give us a report, their opinion, or anything at all.
Ms. Vaughn, help us out.
No, I just to supplement. There's no reason to assume they wouldn't. We've certainly asked for their support before. They just aren't part of the regular review process of all cases. So there's not a automatic review and comment. But we certainly have asked for their input before, and they've weighed in. So there's no reason to think they won't.
Okay. Given that this is the second time we've had this issue that I'm aware of, maybe when we get into a situation like this, that can be part of the consideration in the process before it comes here.
Got it.
Madam Chair.
Fear that this is not the last time. Mr. Owen.
Yeah, another consideration is this is a use permit application, right? The applicant would have had a right to come to us with this very same application without the staff error before they built the fence and said, hey, my fence would look a lot better if it were this tall in this triangle. And I guess, as staff has pointed out, desiring fences in the triangle is common enough that they could quickly find examples even in this very neighborhood. So I feel like, and the other thing is that the analysis is either global, right? Either all intersections are the same and the same safety considerations identically play out everywhere, or each and every intersection is different and needs its own analysis. So I just would put out there, I don't object to a deferral. You know, I certainly think that this applicant deserves the benefit of the doubt since they acted according to what they thought was a valid permit, and I think they should be accommodated to the extent the county can accommodate them. But I do wonder whether or not if we were to say, yeah, we're going to do a traffic analysis for any time someone, are we only going to do it when permits are issued in error, but otherwise we're going to categorically say no to the 25-foot triangle? Or are we going to entertain, in the first instance, incursions in the 25-foot triangle and evaluate the safety considerations thereof? And what's our expectation for the analysis each and every time?
So, Madam Chair, from my standpoint, that's a hypothetical question, but I would generally not approve something in the triangle. But we have a mitigating circumstance here that, we're trying to give the applicant every possible opportunity to be successful. And so that's why I'm willing to at least consider that.
So maybe in the general sense, we would put it on an applicant to bring in their own traffic engineers. But since here the county made an error, maybe the county can help make it up by providing free traffic analysis service.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Smith.
I guess I would agree with Mr. Owen's characterization of the applicant's burden tonight. But the applicant came tonight with in his hand a recommendation by the staff to approve what he's asked for, which had already been approved by the permits department some years earlier and constructed. So I just don't find it palatable to say that the applicant has not met his burden. When he came tonight, knowing that staff was recommending the granting of the use permit with no expectation that he would have to supply traffic engineering data. He went throughout the neighborhood, talked to everybody. The head of the neighborhood has written that she walks through that neighborhood and approaches that intersection all the time. I asked, because I hadn't caught that, because there's such a stack of letters, that she had written that, and so Ives' block, there's a stop sign. You come to the stop sign, you're on the right-hand side, you look both ways, you don't proceed if there is traffic. To ask the applicant, who came tonight with the expectation that the staff's recommendation would carry the day, sent away to seek traffic data that may or may not be persuasive, again, I say is unpalatable. I don't want to add injury to insult. I say, let the project go. Let them be free of this burden.
Yeah. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Melnick.
Okay, I'd be willing to go along with a deferral and, seeing if we could get some kind of input, on some kind of study, because the whole safety aspect is, what's hanging me up on this. So that's what I'd like to see.
Can we have a motion, please?
Is a 2-month deferral sufficient time for staff to make an analysis or request an analysis?
Can I say something before you vote?
Go ahead.
Is it allowed? You wouldn't?
No, I wouldn't.
Well,
2 months of status quo was better than anything else.
okay, I won't say anything then.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, in case V11339-17-UP-3, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer this item to the April 2018 meeting
For the purpose of?
for the purpose of staff requesting a traffic engineering study to determine the safety of the existing condition.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Mr. Melnick for a 2-month deferral. All those in favor?
Madam Chair, before
Mr. Smith.
You say traffic engineering study, and I'm wondering if that's a term of art that puts into motion something that's going to take longer than 2 months, or do we want an opinion
Safety evaluation.
by the traffic engineering department as to whether this application in this context would poses any problems to them?
I liked my wording.
Okay.
Well, then I'd move for. Then I don't think 2 months is going to be enough for a traffic engineering study.
I don't either.
So I would ask for 8 months then. I know at the pace that government moves, and anytime you say engineering study, let's reduce the pace by half at least.
So what are we wanting staff to tell us?
Well, if I could, Madam Chair.
Mr. Melnick.
Somehow I think we ought to focus on the health or safety, persons residing in the neighborhood, and the detrimental to public welfare. So because those are the two standards that I believe, key in here with this triangle. So I think, maybe an opinion about those things in reference to the construction of the fence.
Okay, I will modify my motion, changing the "for the purpose of" to evaluate the effect of the existing condition on the health and safety of persons residing and traveling through this intersection.
And for
Residing near this intersection and traveling, residing near this, in this neighborhood and traveling through this intersection
what time period?
to April.
To April. Was there a second? Mr. Melnick, did you seconded that?
Well, I would say, just a clarification. Would you want to add public welfare to that? Because that's the other standard. Whether it adversely affects the public welfare.
Yes, I will request unanimous consent to add health, safety, and public welfare.
Okay.
Okay.
I won't object to the change, but I am concerned about it because we already have that analysis. Zoning staff have already analyzed this as it affects its safety and the public welfare and have told us they think it's perfectly safe. The problem is that zoning staff is not expert in roadway safety. And so if we get an evaluation without specifying that there be an engineering study by the people who are actually experts in safety, then I wonder whether we will advance the ball when we get to the next meeting.
So the evaluation should be done by traffic engineering?
I think
I think the objection was to the word report. So
Okay.
I'm changing it to evaluation by
by
traffic engineering.
by traffic engineers, yes. Right.
Yeah, I could second that.
Okay, so how about you redo your statement and we redo the second?
I really feel like I should say something, even though it's against the rules. But if we agree to just cut that triangle to 3 feet, because I don't want to put the taxpayer money in Arlington. I'm an Arlington taxpayer. It seems like it's going to be a very expensive study, having engineers and all that go in there. And 2 months from now, we're not going to be here anyway. So if we just agree to cut that corner to the 3 feet, even though it's not going to look very good, but I'm sure that Medallion has some sort of saw to cut that special fence because it's not wood. If we agree to do that, if you can just go ahead and approve it.
I'm hesitant, in part because if it were up to me, you'd leave it as it is. And there's always the possibility that in 2 months, a couple of other staff people come in and say, oops, we gave you the wrong information, you built it, we don't find it's a big problem. And then the original staff recommendation, which we thought we were going to have tonight, would stand. So, for my fence, I wouldn't touch it until I had at least another opinion, since the first opinion you got from the county turned out not to be reliable.
Okay. All right.
That's my recommendation, but that's just me.
I'm just afraid when an engineering study happens, they're going to find this and this and this and all this other stuff.
Case
but I don't
scenario,
know.
you have to cut it down or otherwise deface it. Might not happen.
It might not happen, so we could, yeah, okay.
I'd leave it.
I agree with you.
I'd leave
Good,
it.
good. Okay.
The last
Yes,
applicant,
Mr. Owen.
Madam Chair, with the last applicant, we had several deferrals, and I feel like they left worse off for the deferrals. So, I don't disagree with your reasoning.
I don't think they did leave worse off. They ended up having to mangle their beautiful fence, which was where we were going in the beginning. So, in that case.
Well, then they had fights with their neighborhood association over it, and it dragged out, and they had to come here.
It's
night
not
after
happening
night.
in this case, though.
I mean, there was a complaint. That's how we got the ball rolling here. Someone saw this fence and said in the public and said, "I'm concerned about this fence," and that's what happened with the last fence. No one came the first meeting, and we had a deferral, and then there was more and more argument about it, and the result was not any different. So I think I don't disagree. I don't think your advice to the applicant is unreasonable, but there is another side to the story. And if the applicant would prefer to just get this behind him, he could readjust the fence to have it be by right. And that's leaving aside the question of the 6-foot portion, which we're not really focused on, because I think it's unclear to me whether or not the BZA is prepared to approve the 6-foot tall or deny it. I just don't know. I don't know where the votes are on that.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Smith.
It's just one other vote that you need on that, because you have two who are saying that it's fine as it is. Ms. Malice says it sounds like she's unsure about the 6-foot. Mr. Melnick hasn't weighed in. You just need one of those two.
It might be 5-0. We don't know yet.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying, is that the applicant might leave here with an approval for the 6-foot tall portion, resign himself to lowering the height of the fence where the triangle is, put this all behind him, and move on with his life.
Because we really would have built it at the 3-foot fence if we would have known that that's what we needed to do. We didn't.
Medallion, you said get the permits.
Yeah.
Medallion got the permits. They followed the law. They built it by right, according to the law.
The reason why they asked for a 4-foot fence is because they measured the existing fence that's been there for, 30 years. They measured the existing fence, and that's how they got that.
Well, it seems to me that's an argument you need to have with them, because they clearly, a lot of people dropped a lot of balls here. Could we have the motion, whatever it exists, and at least dispatch with that?
I move in case V11339-17-UP-3 that the BZA defer this matter to the April hearing for the purpose of seeking an evaluation from traffic engineering on the effect on health or safety or health and safety and public welfare to people residing in this neighborhood or traveling through this intersection.
And the second was?
I'll second.
Okay.
Madam
We
Chair,
have Mr. Owen.
I think I heard the applicant say that the April meeting was inconvenient. An inconvenient day would may be preferable to the applicant.
March would be better for us because we're
Can't do March.
March is
There's
illegal.
not enough time for advertising.
April or a later month.
April or later.
June then, because April we have to do out of town thing. Because is it the end of April, right?
April 25th.
25th, we're at the board meeting. We're not at the board meeting? Okay. Yeah, we're members of another board too. So, yeah, no, that will work because it's the first
April
week
will
of
work
May.
for you?
April will work,
Okay,
yes.
so the motion is as read and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. I'm a no. 3-2. See you in April.
Thank you.
One hour, people. Please call the next case.
Case number V-11340-17-UP1 is a use permit request by Dolores Gabriel Rubicleva, the owner, to permit a setback of 11 feet to the porch, 10 feet to the porch eaves instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eaves as required, regarding a new rear screen porch on a lot with a rear alley in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 818 North Frederick Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff?
Just a language question. A permit of a setback of 11 feet to the porch, is there a from there?
To the porch?
Between the porch and what?
Yeah.
The rear lot line.
Yeah, that seems to be missing from this description, what we're measuring to. Then the next part says instead of 21 feet to the porch. Could you Just clarify how that should read.
Use permit request by Dolores Gabriel Rubicueva, owner, to permit a setback of 11 feet to the porch, 10 feet to the porch eaves from the rear lot line, instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the eaves, as required from the rear lot line.
Rear lot line.
So it was advertised that way too, without the rear line
Correct.
language.
Problem? I mean, it's not something, I don't know how that got missed, but.
Is that a problem?
I don't believe so. It's a rear porch. The setback is 21 feet from the rear lot line.
So it's assumed it's from the rear lot line. Okay. Questions for staff? Other than that. Applicant, please.
Good evening. I am Gabriel Rukawa, and my wife is sitting down. I do want to add one thing. I do have a letter of support here, and I'll turn into staff, I guess.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, may I ask from whom?
from 812 Frederick Street, which is the immediate neighbor
Okay.
on my south side. And on the 5140 is a business with a parking lot, basically the entire rest of the lot. 5150 is another business, a laundromat. And 811 North Florida is a rental property. Has been for many, many years. It's actually a frat house, I guess, because during the summer they have a lot of parties.
And you want to have a rear porch up
Yeah, and I
against
want to
that?
have a real porch, actually, yes.
Okay. Your call. Okay. Anything else you need to tell us? Shall we just proceed?
No, other than I recommend that you accept the staff recommendation.
Okay,
That's
got
it.
it.
And who do you want me to give this to? Okay.
Any questions for the applicant? Any speakers, Mike?
Are the speakers?
No speakers.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Owen?
I have a question for the applicant.
Okay.
So do you think that, I recognize that your adjacent neighbors are commercial businesses and a absentee landlord, but did you tell them about your planned work?
No, I did not. And I will mention specifically why. If you look back to 5150, you see the alleyway. That alleyway has been blocked off, and I'm in contention with that owner. In other words, it's raised, and he's made it a parking lot. And I've complained to zoning about it, and so that is kind of an adversarial. We're still in process on that. It's an adversarial contention, and basically it's a tucked away parking lot, and people come and go at all times of the day. And in addition, that was when I went to zoning. You can see right there, it's been made into a parking lot. I don't have access to the alleyway, and he's also included a dumpster. The buildup of the alleyway and the dumpster are not permitted. Okay, so we've had some contention there. I have generally good to great relationship with 5140, the owner of 5140, Florida. I, in fact, rented a business place there many years ago with him, but he lives in Florida. I've sent him a note, but what can I say? And the 811 North Florida, that has been a rental property for 25 years. And so the only other thing I'd point out is that there's a garage right on the property line for 811 and 812.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not changing the overall view of the neighborhood.
So I think it just bears mentioning that we usually hope for applicants to reach out to all of their neighbors and property owners, even when it's a landlord-tenant situation. We suggest that people reach out to the tenants and to try and write a letter to the county has records of who the landlords are. So that's a general recommendation. In this particular situation, the configuration of exactly where you're building gives me less anxiety in other cases, but I just, for the sake of the record, I wouldn't want to, by silence, seem to agree that because something's a rental, that means they're off of consideration. But in your particular circumstances, it seems less a big deal to me.
Other questions for the applicant? Mr. Malloy?
If there are no speakers, I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
Okay, so in case B1134017 UP1, I would move that the Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals grant the use permit request with the attached resolution, so granting it with the conditions as stated.
Second. Moved by Mr. Malnick, seconded by Mr. Smith for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case, please.
Case number V-11341-17-UP1 is a use permit request by Stephen Manlove, owner, to permit a setback of 16.1 feet to the wall, 15.9 feet to the eaves of an addition along the vacation lane right-of-way instead of 25 feet, 21 feet to the eaves as required, regarding a one-story addition on a corner lot in the R8 zoning district, premise known as 4259 Vacation Lane. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff? Applicant?
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. You, my
Could you
wife
state
and I-
your name, please?
Yes, my name is Stephen Manlove, and my wife and I and my children have been living in this house for 9 years, and we're very fond of it, very fond of the neighborhood. We're looking forward to staying there for a long time, and we would like to have a main floor master bedroom suite, and because of the shape of the lot, there really is no other shape and the elevation of the lot. There really is no other option for a location other than in the space that we are suggesting. We have, our intent is to have a design that is very much in keeping with the style of the existing home, which was built in 1941, which would then allow the house to be, and that style to be preserved in that neighborhood for a long time to come, and allow us to stay in it for that period. Have any questions for me?
Questions for the applicant?
I do.
Mr. Owen?
Your application materials that you gave to staff said that you included an email from your neighbor at 4251, but I don't think that made it into the packet. So I'm wondering if either you or staff can help us.
Staff can pass that out now.
So who is Steve Manlove? The person who's, oh, you're the Steve Manlove. Got it, sorry.
Who's the applicant?
Who's Sean Turner?
Sean Turner is the owner of the house directly adjacent. They'd be sharing the property line. Sean is, the house is rented. He is the owner.
Okay. So he said that his email was the one that reads, "Hey, Steve, per our discussion the other day, I'm in agreement with your plans. Keep me posted on the progress."
Right.
Great. Okay. Because I think your neighbor, that property is the one that's probably most affected. They have a porch that's really close to where you're going to build your addition, and so they'll see it and, all that stuff. So it's great that you reached out to the property owner. They have tenants too, right? Is it owner occupied?
No, he rents the property.
Right. So this pursuant to the last applicant that just went, right? You reached out to the landowner even though it was rented, which is great and very helpful. So thank you for doing that. And my only other question is, in this photo that's up on the screen right now, there's a tree, a large forked tree to the far left of the photo. Is that tree going to live?
That is a chestnut oak, and that tree will go. That tree was actually, it's a single tree split. There was a second tree there, which in 2014 was completely dead, and we had an arborist out and who said that of course the tree was dead, so that was removed. But we also have a report where they've referred to that tree right there, and it's evident in the time of foliage that tree is in decline, serious decline in the crown, and would be removed within. It's imminent in any case that tree is dying.
So did you say you have an arborist report?
Well, we have a report from 2014 that refers to that tree, and it's really a one-line statement, but what he says is the chestnut oak, dual-stemmed, upper crown decline noted. And so we're seeing the tree in decline, and much as the tree that was removed with it. So yeah, that tree will go. We're rather fond of the canopy of North Arlington, and I can assure you we will be replacing anything that we take down.
Thank you. That's very helpful information.
Thank you. We have a speaker, John Sheridan. Okay, thank you.
John is the architect and builder.
Right. Any other questions or comments?
The other architect.
The other architect, the one who knows how to do this.
Mr. Melnick.
So first of all, I wanted to commend you on the plans, and the fact that it's a, one-story addition. I can see you placed it well, and, I think as far as the design, I think it's it's definitely not overbearing, and I appreciate your efforts to reach out to. So I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Zoning Appeals grant the use request pursuant to the resolution.
Second.
The staff report. With the conditions stated.
Moved by Mr. Melnick, seconded by Mr. Owen for approval. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, should I
Mr.
have
Melnick?
recited the number?
Sorry?
No, I didn't recite the number.
Okay, go ahead. Recite it.
So just to clarify, my motion was V1134117UP1.
Thank you. Next case, please.
Case number V-11342-17-UP1 is a use permit by Jessica and James Perkins, owners, to permit a setback of 23.2 feet to the front wall of an existing second-story addition instead of 23.4 feet to the wall as existing below and required from the front property line, and to permit a setback of 18.2 feet to the front porch, 17.7 feet to the porch eaves instead of 21 feet, 19.5 feet to the eaves as required regarding a new front porch and existing second-story addition, R6 zoning district, premise known as 4928 18th Street North. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff?
Just another comment on the language. Is the place where we're measuring from clear in here? Front setback?
From the front property line.
All of these are from the front property
Correct.
line?
Front porch. Okay.
Yeah, I see that. Okay.
Got it? Okay, applicant, please. Go ahead.
Hey, good evening to the board. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to present these. I realize you...
Could you state your name, please?
Skylar Ahrens.
Thank you.
I realize you get all these in advance and everything, so I won't regurgitate everything that's in here, but I'll just point out the request is for the siding of the second-story structure, and then the second request is additionally for the new porch at the front. Typical Arlingtonian-type porch, nothing special about it. And, oh, you've got the most recent. Okay, so yes, that's the second story that was done by right. And again, they're just asking for essentially the siding to be added to what is existing front brick facade on the lower level, and also additionally on the second level as well. And with that, I'll leave it to you with any other questions you may have for me.
Questions for Mr. Ahrens?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen?
I don't have any questions for the applicant, and I'm basically in support of this application, but I did have some follow-up question to the one Ms. Malice asked. The ordinance requirements are measured from the street right-of-way line, but the advertisement talks about the property line, and my understanding is that those are not always the same thing. that in, for example, there's places in Arlington where the property line runs to the middle of the street, and the street right-of-way goes to where we see the street and sidewalks existing. And I don't know what the condition is for this property. Are you sure that the property line and the street right-of-way line are the same on this parcel?
Yes.
Okay.
On this parcel, it's one and the same.
So in this location, the street and sidewalk, there's no sidewalk, right?
Yes, there is.
Oh, there is a sidewalk. So is the sidewalk fee simple to the county?
The sidewalk is part of the street right-of-way, correct?
Okay. Great. The other thing I'll note, just as a point of interest, is that this property appears on the cover of the Arlington County zoning ordinance, and the picture on the cover. Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution approving the use permit V-11342-17-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the proposed resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Malice for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you to the board.
Next case, please.
Case number V-11343-17-UP1 is a use permit request by Richard and Linda Kaplan, owners, to permit a setback of 17.5 feet, 17 feet to the eaves to the porch instead of 21 feet, 19.5 feet to the porch eaves as required, and to permit a setback of 22.4 feet to the wall of an addition instead of 25 feet as required from the 25th North Road right-of-way, and to permit a setback of 6.6 feet to the wall of an addition instead of 8 feet from the adjacent property line as required, regarding a new front porch and one-story addition on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 6024 25th Road North. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and I'd like to please note that there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed, and it is a letter of opposition from a neighbor.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Applicant?
Good evening. My name is Richard Kaplan. I'm the homeowner at 6024 25th Road North. I won't bore you with the details. I think I provided sufficient information. We're essentially asking for a bigger porch and a kitchen/dining room addition. In developing this plan, we tried to give a lot of thought to the neighbors, and so we went with this one-story instead of a two-story, which would have given us another bathroom. I have not read the letter from the neighbor, although I have had extensive discussions with her. So I'm happy to address her concerns, in that letter if you have questions. I have additional pictures and materials, based on your concerns.
You can have my copy and read it, and then you can respond to it later.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen.
I am inclined to improve this application. I did have a chance to read the neighbor's letter, and I'm sympathetic to their concerns because some monster homes have been built in their rear yard, and so that are quite, to me, out of scale with the neighbor's house and indeed with the applicant's house. But those houses have now been built, and the character of the neighborhood has clearly begun to change, and so our evaluation is whether or not the applicant's addition is in character with the rest of the neighborhood and with those monster homes right next to them. This is an extremely modest addition and strikes me as quite approvable.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the applicant? Did you want to comment on the letter? Or?
It didn't give any specific reasons other than what the board said, so I don't want to, bore everyone with we've had a lot of discussions about it. I've offered, I'm willing to compromise with you, like what can we do? And, the answer was, zoning rules are there for a reason, and I will not go 1 inch over. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the use permit V-11343-17-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Malice for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Next case, please.
Case number V-11344-17-UP-2 is a use permit request by Castlewood Investments LLC, the owners to permit a setback of 18.2 feet to the wall of an addition instead of 25 feet as required from the South Joyce Street right-of-way regarding a new 98.01 square foot two-story addition without side eaves, as well as a by right second-story addition on a corner lot in the R5 zoning district, premise known as 1001 17th Street South. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Owen?
has staff received a complete disclosure statement from the applicant?
The applicant provided paperwork as to the makeup of the LLC that is listed on the disclosure statement, but not an updated disclosure statement.
What's the new information?
It's a sole member LLC with Brian R. Morris as the sole entity.
That's his affidavit.
Yeah, that's all we have.
Okay.
Oh, I see. I missed it on the next page. So it's already there in our packet the whole time.
Correct.
Got it.
You're
All
forgiven.
right. Thank you.
Applicant, please.
Yes, my name is Brian Morris. I am a sole member of Castlewood Investment, which owns the property at 1001 17th Street, South Arlington. So we're looking to put an addition off the back of the house in concert with the character of the neighborhood. We've gone around to 4 or 5 of our neighbors who all have basically signed off and said that that would be an added addition to the neighborhood and would be very close to what some of the other neighbors have done just up the road from us.
Questions for the applicant?
So I have a question. So you're Brian Morris?
Yes.
Okay. So I noticed that the letter to the neighbors was from Ricardo Navarro, and he said he's the new owner. So who is Mr. Navarro?
So Mr. Navarro is my partner, and he is also a licensed general contractor.
Okay.
He's a partner in the LLC?
He's not a partner in the LLC, but we have a joint venture agreement between his company and my company.
So that makes me wonder about the completeness of the financial disclosure then. So question 3 on the disclosure statement says, list the names and addresses and nature of interest of all persons having equitable ownership of the real estate to be affected, including, in the case of corporate ownership, the names of stockholders, officers, and directors, semicolon, and of all, in all capitals, parties and interest. So if you have a contractual relationship with somebody for the development of this property, it's not clear to me that that shouldn't have been disclosed in the financial disclosure statement.
Madam Chair, while he's thinking about that, maybe is there a construction company separate from Castlewood that you and Mr. Navarro are partnered in?
No, the construction company is owned by Mr. Navarro.
Okay, because I mean earlier you said you were partnered. Are you a principal in the construction company?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so it does sound like it's of the nature of an equitable interest that there may be Mr. Navarro may share in, or
if I could, Madam Chair.
Mr.
So who is on the deed to the property? Like who is the title owner on the deed?
Castlewood Investment.
Okay. And so this is simply a construction contract between you and the company that Mr. Navarro is associated with? Is it just a construction contract for services to jointly do construction?
That's part of the relationship, yes.
Okay.
Could you just go ahead and describe what the business relationship is you have with Mr. Navarro?
Yes, so Castlewood Investment and Mr. Navarro, we enter into a JV arrangement whereby Castlewood Investment purchases and owns the property, and upon sale, Mr. Navarro would receive some sort of interest in the sale of the property.
Mr. Mallow.
What disturbed me a little bit is that the letter to the neighbors, it takes on a very different, it appears different because he seems to be representing that he's an individual owner. And, instead of listing, the company, because that's very different generally when a construction company owns it, as opposed to just an individual. So, and with him saying we are the new owners in process of applying, I thought it was, when I looked at it, I think it could make people get the wrong idea about really who is the owner here, an individual versus, an LLC or a construction company, that kind of thing. So that hit me a little bit the wrong way. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I just thought I'd bring that out.
Other questions, comments?
I mean, to me, it's a little bit of a shame because it's a modest addition, and I don't really have any problem with it. But for this issue, it seems like an easy, quick approval. But there's a strict requirement for disclosure of parties in interest to make an application, and it appears to me that might not have been done. And I think that Mr. Melnick's point that a neighbor might feel that they were not, Mr. Navarro represented himself as an owner of the property, and then is not representing himself as an owner of the property to the BZA. And I think that there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. And it may not even be a material discrepancy, but this isn't really it's not like compatibility with the neighborhood where we evaluate it. This is a black and white issue. So my inclination would be to defer this until we can get the paperwork right. And once they do, I'm happy to say I don't object to the substance of it, but I'm concerned about, and this is far from the first time that we have had trouble with corporate ownership of property not doing their financial disclosures. I would say, unfortunately, more often than not, when we have corporate ownership of land, we don't get full disclosure on the first try, and I'm really concerned about that pattern.
Well, that's true, but even in this case where you have the solicitation of support that clearly says, I'm the new guy, and then the new guy doesn't appear anywhere, I tend to be a little bit more forgiving in general, but that's a clear discrepancy.
And Madam Chair,
Mr. Smith.
if I might join in, get in a couple of, I put my two, it's clearly, we see this all the time. We see this all the time with developers coming in and doing deals and doing projects and that's fine. It's the disclosure of who has an interest. That's a small thing, but it is a black and white thing, as Mr. Owen says, and it is a little disingenuous to purport to be a neighbor when you're really a developer, which is fine.
Nothing wrong with being a
nothing wrong with that at all. And coming back with a cleaner, accurate
financial
disclosure that discloses will carry the day. I'm sure because again I don't like my colleagues. I don't have a problem with the project at all.
Right. Any other comments, Mr. Owen?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
Madam Chair, I move that we defer this item to the April BZA meeting.
Second.
Would you read the case number, please?
Yes, in case V-11344-17-UP-2, I move that the BZA defer the item to the April 2018 BZA meeting.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Mr. Smith to defer to April. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case, please.
Case number V-11345-17-UP1 is a use permit request by Troy and Kristen Hendricks, owners, to permit a setback of 12.6 feet to the porch, 12 feet to the porch eaves from the North Emerson Street right-of-way, and 12 feet to the porch, 11.3 feet to the porch eaves from the 20th Street North right-of-way instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eaves as required, and to permit a setback of 10.7 feet to the wall, 10.3 feet to the eaves of the two-story rear addition instead of 25 feet to the wall, 21 feet to the eaves from the 20th Street North right-of-way as required, and to permit a setback of 9.2 feet to the chimneys instead of 23.5 feet as required, 8.8 feet as existing, and to permit a setback of 4.1 feet to the new steps from the right property line instead of 5 feet as required, and to permit a setback of 3.4 feet to the new siding, 3 feet to the eaves from the right property line instead of 8 feet as required, and to permit a setback of 9.5 feet to the siding, 9.1 feet to the eaves from the 20th Street North right-of-way instead of 25 feet, 21 feet to the eaves as required, and to permit a setback of 19.3 feet to the siding and 19 feet to the eaves from the North Emerson Street right-of-way instead of 25 feet, 19.5 feet to the eaves as required regarding a new front porch extension, new two-story rear addition, new rear chimney, new right side steps, new siding, and new eaves overhang for an existing part of the house on a corner lot, R6 zoning district, premise known as 2000 North Emerson Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen?
That took you a long time to read.
Yeah.
And in some of the previous ones, there were what seemed to be some words missing. And it just makes me wonder, and we don't have to dwell on it, but I just want to say, does it have to be framed this way? Could we advertise these in like a table format so that we can just say from this to this, from this dimension to that dimension?
I think that's up to the newspaper. I mean, I don't know if they allow a table.
Okay. I would just say maybe sometime, again, I don't want to delay this meeting unnecessarily, but this was a good example of how this phrasing seems to, I don't know who reads something like this paragraph and says, oh, I see what they're asking for, you know? So I just don't know if this is a helpful way to approach it. And I think if there were a standardized format, then the other information that we were asking for and the others would naturally be there every time, right? Which dimension is compared to what, and with the eaves, you could imagine a standardized format. So just a thought there.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Miles?
The staff report indicates there's 4 letters. Has staff received any more since this report was published?
No.
Okay, thank you. Applicants, please.
We do have a couple additional support letters. We can turn
Okay, let's have those, and please state your names.
Kristen Hendricks and Troy Hendricks.
Thank you.
So the letters of support are from the direct rear neighbor who we share a fence line with, and then the neighbor next to them, so we're adjacent on the block, as well as the neighbor across the street. So in the picture, so 20th Street is going kind of left to right, so 1950 Emerson Street.
It's the house that's diagonal.
The diagonal one,
yeah.
So we have support letters from the...
Three additional?
3 additional, yes, ma'am. So we have support letters from the 2 neighbors behind us, and then our direct neighbor next door to us. I believe it's builder-owned. It's for sale. It's recently gone.
17.
So it's on the market right now. And yes, it is a mouthful, but essentially a rear addition going straight back and then up a second floor.
Okay, questions? Other questions for the applicants? Thank you.
I'd just note that this is another neighborhood where there's incredible contrast between the old houses and the new houses. And so this addition helps bring this applicant's house more into compatibility with the new houses.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Smith.
I would move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the use permit in V-11345-17-UP1 subject to the conditions that are listed in the staff report.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Owen. All those in favor
Aye.
of approval? Aye. Thank you for your waiting. Next case, please.
Case number V-11346-17-UP1 is a use permit request by Patrick L. Norman, owner, to permit a setback of 20 feet to the wall, 19.8 feet to the eave of a one-story rear addition from the 9th Road North instead of 25 feet as required, regarding a new one-story rear addition on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 942 North McKinley, and as pointed out by one of your colleagues, road, not street.
Is there an advertising issue here with having the wrong street advertised?
I did actually look. I made sure that all of the notices went to the correct properties surrounding this property. There is no actually 942 North McKinley Road. They're all in the 2500s. It's a one little block street.
Was the paper notice street or road?
The notice is as reads here, street.
Is this typically, the subject typically what gets advertised?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't feel that there's an issue there with misidentifiing the property?
I don't feel that there's an issue. I feel like the neighbors who needed to be notified were notified. Staff did use road consistently throughout the staff report, even though it says street here.
In other words, there is no comparable address. There is no road.
Correct.
There is no street.
There's no street.
I mean, street.
There's no 942 North McKinley Street. It doesn't exist.
Well, there is, I think there is a McKinley Street.
There is a North McKinley Street.
942 McKinley Street.
Nothing even close. It's 2500 through 2600.
Okay. I've been remiss for not mentioning that I appreciate the graphics that are being included in the reports. They're helpful. Thank you. Applicant, please.
Good evening. I'm Patrick Norman. My goal is to build a one-story, modest master bedroom and bathroom addition so that we have 3 bedrooms on the main floor as opposed to 2 that we currently have so that we can accommodate a growing family.
Okay. Questions for the applicant?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen.
Because of the steep hills in your neighborhood and the configuration of yours and your neighbors' lots in the streets, it seemed to me that the neighbors at 6109 and 6105 McKinley Street, I'm sorry, 9th Road, would probably be the ones who would see your addition the most. And I'm just wondering if you talked to them or mentioned to them that you were thinking of doing this.
I did speak with them. I neglected to bring a letter from one of those 2 that I do have, and they are in support, as well as my immediate rear neighbor on Nottingham. He's, I think, probably most impacted, and I provided a letter of support from him, as well as my other next-door neighbor and one across the street on McKinley.
Which of those 2 neighbors, 6109 and 6105, did you get the letter from?
The one on the corner, I apologize, I don't know the address.
That's 948 McKinley Road.
Oh, okay.
But they're down the hill from you a lot, right? And so I'm actually wondering about their next door neighbors 2 in that are on the same height as you. Mm-hmm. Did you talk to them as well?
I did speak with them. I didn't get a letter from them.
Could I actually chime in here as well? While I was taking photos of the property, the neighbor at 933, directly behind this, the owner actually reversed all the way up the block to come talk with me. He stated that he had a good conversation with the applicant and had no objections to what was being proposed.
Well, we actually have in the packet a letter of support from that neighbor. But this photograph I believe, is taken from in front of 6105.
This is, I believe, a little bit further up the street, but along there, yes.
It's either 6105 or 6109. So that's why, I mean, it's not an accident that, this is where you took the photo from, because this is the easiest place to see what's going on. So that's why my interest is, I think those are the neighbors that if it was terrible, right, they would be the ones who would be most likely to say, well, could you make an adjustment? So that's why I'm really interested in knowing the outreach there. So what you're saying, just to clarify, is that you talked to the neighbors at both 6105 and 6109 9th Road, but you haven't gotten written support from them?
That's correct.
Okay. And the legal notice, would the legal notice have gone to either of those neighbors?
Both.
Okay.
The notice, I believe, in this case went to the 3 properties in a row there, as well as 933, the property up the hill, the adjacent property, 936, 945, 949 across the street, and 6099 diagonal across.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Miller,
I'd like to make a motion.
please.
Okay, so in case D1134617 UP1, I would move that the Board of Zoning Appeals grant the use permit request with the attached resolution with the conditions as stated.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Melnick, seconded by Ms. Malice for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next case, please.
Case number V-11347-17-UP1 is a use permit request by James T. Horner and Jean Horner, owners, to permit a setback of 10.6 feet to the wall of an addition from adjacent property line instead of 12.8 feet as required, and to permit a setback of 7.3 feet to the left side landing instead of 8.8 feet as required, and an aggregate side yard of 15.8 feet instead of 18 feet as required regarding a new one-story left side addition and new landing with step in the R6 zoning district premise known as 5728 2nd Street South. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff? Applicant?
Hi, my name is Jean Horner. I'm owner. My husband is at home with our children. I just would like to point out that the existing house and lot were both designed and allotted before the new ordinance was put in, which is a 50-foot wide lot, and the ordinance is for a 60-foot lot with an aggregate setback of 18 feet. We have 10 feet fewer, and it's being applied, the 18-foot setback is being applied to our smaller lot. And that's all I have to say.
Questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, if
Mr. Melnick,
there aren't any other speakers, I'd like to make a motion on this.
please.
Okay, so in case Z1134717 UP1, I'd move that the Board of Zoning Appeals grant the use permit request with the attached resolutions and the conditions stated therein.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Melnick, seconded by Mr. Owen for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Next case, please.
Case number V-11348-17-UP-1 is a use permit request by Mark and Nancy Buchholz, owners, Buchholz, thank you, to permit a setback of 19.5 feet to the porch, 19 feet to the porch eaves from the Fort Scott Drive right-of-way instead of 19 feet to the porch, 19.5 to the porch eaves as required regarding the replacement of an existing front porch on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district property known as 2823 Fort Scott Drive. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Owen.
I would like to disclose for the record that I'm acquainted with the Buchholzes, but I do not think my acquaintance will affect my ability to be objective in this case.
Chair.
Wow. I'm dazzled. Okay. Any questions for the staff? Applicants, are we having, yes?
Did I read correctly that the BZA has previously approved this, had previously approved the same configuration by variance? That isn't it true that we got a variance application for the same property for the same thing?
I thought the variance was
We
for
approved a
the
variance for it.
1964.
other side, the addition on the other side. South Grove Street.
Can we proceed?
I'm sorry, I didn't. So it's not the same side of the house?
So the majority, I guess, there was a smaller setback on Fort Scott Drive from 50 feet to 46 feet.
I guess my question is, why are we here? Why isn't this already within the scope of the previous variance? Mr. Buckholz, you're a lawyer. Do you have a view on this?
Not a lawyer.
Oh, I thought you were.
I don't even
See,
play
this
one
is
on
why I
TV.
can be objective, because I don't know him that well.
Okay. Hold on. Do we need to resolve your question before we proceed?
It's the same question. Does anyone know whether this is within the scope of the previous variance?
Mr. Ahrens.
Good evening to the board.
Welcome back.
As always, I'm just subject to whatever zoning tells me. We did go through the permit process prior to this and applied for the permit for the structure, in which we were denied and told we would need to get a use permit. I tend not to argue unless I know I can win with the zoning department, and didn't know anything about the previous variance, and no one ever told me. That could be some due diligence on my part, but...
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Ahrens or the applicants?
I'd just like to answer the variance question.
The structure is supposed to remain the same size as it currently is.
But it's like, this says 41.4 feet from the center line, and this says 19.5 feet. So there's a tenth of a foot difference.
Thank you.
So they're not identical.
Wait, what?
Which may have been the hiccup at the permit office.
There's a 1.5 inch difference?
It's a 0.1 foot difference, but yes.
All right.
Actually less than 1.5.
Yeah.
Mathematically accurate, but.
So.
This usually only happens at 1 in the morning.
There was.
Okay. Let's move on. Do we have questions on the application and what the applicant's requesting?
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Thank you.
In case, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V11348-17-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Mr. Smith for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you to the board.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have minutes. I trust that we have revised minutes. I still have an issue because I have a gender issue on page 6, which refers to Mr. Freshman and Mr. Owen voting against the motion. George and Laura Johnson.
Were they here?
Anyway, other than that.
Sorry, what case was that, Miss?
Sorry?
Miss? Page 6.
6, George and Laura Johnson.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other than that, I entertain a motion for approval.
Madam Chair, go ahead.
I move that we adopt the December 20, 2017 minutes as presented with typographical change.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Owen?
I'm confused about what we're voting on. Are we voting on the minutes as were passed out at the beginning of this meeting, or the minutes that were in our packet?
We're voting on the minutes that were passed out, which were presumably updated, except for Mr. Freshman.
Okay, because I had a question about the material that had been on page 10.
Okay, why don't you check it?
Okay, well, spit it out.
Trying to find the right one. Okay, yes, this one. Okay, so this was one where you guys had voted 4-1 against me to do whatever you did, I think to approve the use permit. And the resolution whereas clauses, there was some confusion during that item about which resolution was which. And it seemed to me that the resolution text, the whereases seemed to say the opposite of what you were voting for. And so maybe I misread that, but that was my original question. Mr. Rissa, did you take a look at that?
I honestly didn't look at the whereas clauses, other than to say this kind of leads into a different question you brought out. So, no, I'm sorry. I made the changes but didn't look extensively at the whereas clauses.
Okay, I think it was maybe, and I just, at the time, since it wasn't my motion, I didn't really feel like it was appropriate for me to rewrite your guys' motion. And maybe it's okay now. Oh, no, you guys were voting for denial. Right, I would have approved it, and you guys were voting for denial of the variance. But the third and fourth whereas clauses are the ones you would normally find for an approval of a variance. And I just wanted to make sure that that's what you guys had intended to say.
I will chime in on that then, because that does kind of segue to the other conversation. Staff was recommending denial based on some but not all of the whereas clauses. And so that's what was shown in the proposed resolution.
Are we good?
If you are good, I'm good.
Good. Yeah. Where are we? Do we have a motion? I don't even.
Made and seconded.
Made and seconded. Okay, good. Works for me.
Sorry.
I second it.
Thank you.
Okay. Revised minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay. Now, the last item is election.
There's a calendar too, right?
Yeah, 2 more.
Oh, the calendar. Sorry. The next to the last item is the calendar.
Chair,
Mr. Owen.
I move that the BZA approve the calendar as presented.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Mr. Smith to approve the calendar as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Elections. Who's volunteering to be chair? And who's volunteering to be vice chair?
Are you going to volunteer again for chair? Are you going to?
It's not, I mean, I've done my 2 years, right? That's the normal course of events. I would do it if I was forced to. But I don't object to doing it, but I don't think it's a great precedent in the normal course of things. The vice chair rises. That is not your choice, so speak up, volunteer, or make a motion, or nominate people, or whatever you want to do.
Well, I'm not volunteering for chair, but I am volunteering for vice chair. If Mr. Melnick does not wish to become chair.
Okay, that's well, you got halfway there.
The easy half.
I think it's you and me, bud.
Well, I'm gonna do this is my last year, so I'll do 1 year. But this is the end of my tenure as a BZA member. I'll have 20 years at the end of this, so I will consider that the end. So somebody's gonna have to step up next year.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen.
I move Charles Smith for chair and Inta Malice for vice chair.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yippee. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Move adjournment?
Can I just ask you a question before we adjourn?
Sure.
Could, in the matter of how long we will tolerate deferrals,
Yes.
Since staff does not have a policy, could we establish our policy and basically let staff know that anything that goes longer than a certain amount, we will routinely deny unless the applicant can present some compelling reason for us.
It's fine with me. I would suggest a year, just because a year is what our approvals are.
And that way staff can then warn applicants of where we're at. And
it doesn't happen that often, but we have a couple of chronic cases. And
we have Barnes and we have.
Well, no, that's not his. No, it's the guy on Ohio Street, and but anyway.
Yeah.
Some of Barnes' clients, yes, but some of them are fine. Anyway, yes, I agree. I think it would be. Do we have the power to do that? Make our own policy?
It's our policy.
Yeah, it would be it would be a policy, or it would be kind of a guideline. We can't add to the zoning ordinance,
Right.
but we can certainly ask staff to indicate that the BZA is not happy with deferrals from applications that have been pending for a year.
And it's a fiscal issue. I mean, to me, it's just an abuse of power, unless they want to, pay another fee or something. But I mean, it just makes no sense to me that they can just do that, and the county incurs a lot of expense as a result.
I think my understanding is that we always have the right to hear a case before us on the merits, right? So we wouldn't make a policy that we would deny anything.
It's not automatic, no.
Right, but that we would not defer anything.
Be ready.
We can demand not to defer. That's within our power. So, I think the expectation would be that if something would go longer than a year, if a deferral was requested, then it should be, no applicant should expect that they will be granted any deferrals after a year, and they should be prepared to come each and every time to substantively debate. And that's the only thing that saved the applicant this time, right? Because Mr. Smith said, they might not have realized, but we still could have done it. We had the legal right to proceed. It was just out of equity that we chose not to.
Doing it, yeah.
But now that we are announcing this policy,
They'll know April that they should be ready to withdraw or to go forward.
right, they and presumably anyone else. This reminds me, by the way, that there's on the website, there's like the BZA guidelines, how-to stuff, and it's been about a year and a half since it was revised, and it's mostly up to date, but this might be something to include in that, and maybe take a look at it and see if there's one or two other things that could be updated.
It's just what they give me.
So
Okay.
I did have two other questions I had posed in my email to Mr. Rizzi earlier. One is, who should I ask if I wanted to know whether we've been appealed or overruled on any of our recent cases? Are you the right one to ask, or should I direct my question someplace else?
So we'll only know if we're served with documents. And in those situations, not only are we served as staff, but the chair is served as well. So the chair should have knowledge of any cases that are brought to the circuit court. That said, once it goes there, we're really not involved with it. So it would be best to contact the county legal department.
Because if the circuit court says we were right or wrong about something, I mean, they're the boss, and so we need to know what the boss is saying to us. So perhaps, and so are you suggesting that we should write directly to the county attorney to get that information and not through you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Will do. And I presume that may apply then to the other questions that I asked, which is that there might be Supreme Court decisions that don't come through us, but that have presidential value for us, as well as occasionally Mr. Lawson and conceivably other attorneys say, well, in Fairfax, they just decided a case last month that, so if that's a surprise to us, it's hard for us to figure out what to do. So, all right, so ask those questions to the county attorney is what you're saying. All right.
If it's an interpretation of law, doesn't staff get briefed? Because you need to know that.
Because you're making determinations.
We haven't been, there's nothing that's come up recently. So I suppose as those things arise, that will happen. But in the past 2 years, there's been nothing that I've been briefed on in terms of a change. Other things, but not pertinent to the BZA.
Because we were my understanding is that we were overruled on the CVS matter, and I think we were upheld on that condo it's across from A-Town.
Yes.
And I don't remember what happened. No, I was there. We were both there for the one that was the subdivision from 3 into 2 parcels where we were upheld.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it seems like it's relevant, what they think.
Especially when we're overruled.
Yeah, especially then.
But it seemed like something else happened at the CVA after that ruling.
It's being appealed to the Virginia Supreme Court.
Oh.
The county is appealing that.
Right.
Oh.
So while we thought that maybe they didn't fight that very hard, they're fighting it now.
Huh. All right.
And I heard that on the street.
Okay. And then the second question is, I don't think I get how you guys decide when and when not to put in an alternative resolution. And I was wondering if you could tell us your thinking on that.
All right. This is my own thinking. We didn't have a policy for when to give those. I will always give you the staff's recommendation. If the staff's recommendation is for denial, I'll always give you an alternative resolution for approval as advertised. Outside of that, I'm not going to give alternative resolutions because there are so many criterias and subpoints of the criterias. I'm not sure, what you may object to. For example, the cases from December, I could not have foreseen the objections brought by the board. So I will leave it to you to make those motions. And you always have the ability to say deny and then just say which of the criteria you disagree with.
Right.
But I just can't.
So what's in the minutes we just approved, I think in some cases there's more verbiage in the resolutions than literally we said into the record at the time. That's my impression. I didn't re-listen to that 8-hour hearing in its entirety, but
I will disagree on that unless you specifically add language to the resolution, which you do. But if you don't, I take the resolution that says proposed and it becomes...
No. What I'm saying is in the December meeting, there were a couple cases where you had not given us a resolution to do what we ultimately did, right? So we passed a motion, and my recollection, not having reread the tape, is that we said something like, move in this case to deny the application, right? And then what appeared in the minutes was like 2 or 3 sentences as opposed to 4 or 5 words, right? And it still didn't say much more than deny, but you garnished it with all the appropriate particulars, is what my impression.
Yes, I won't add any substance. I will make it
Complete thought.
a complete sentence.
So this is a question of efficiency, right? It might be a waste of your time to do 2 resolutions every single time when lots of times it'll just be wasted work. On the other hand, while 50 people are waiting in the room, if we're having to put pen to paper and all that kind of stuff, that could also be an inefficiency. So I wonder whether or not.
Well, I like Stephen's point with respect to if he's recommending denial, he'll put in an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's recommending approval, I see his point. How would he know on what basis we would go another way on that?
Well, we could tell him, right? I mean, that's an option. Is if one of us thinks, hey, I wonder about this one. Do you think you could have something ready?
Where you pointed out the fact that it wasn't unique in the neighborhood in terms of that bump out,
right?
Or maybe that was November, but so. Having both in the case where he's recommending approval doesn't seem like it makes, having a denial in there. Denial on what basis? I mean,
I don't object. I mean, I think that's what Steve's practice as he described it sounds reasonable to me. And then my only remaining question is, if that's the reasonable practice, is there anything else that we would do in addition to that to be ready if it looks like we might actually wind up for the denial?
I will say that the proposed resolution, if it's for approval, literally you just have to change 2 words in it and we can rewrite it for denial. If you just say deny instead of approve and then say which of the whereas you disagree with, that's a perfectly thorough denial resolution.
Okay. Works for me for now.
Please move to adjourn. Thank. Second?
Aye.
Okay.
Have a good night, everyone.